Hey, what's up, everybody? Nationally televised game night, in-state games, opportunities for quad 1, quad 2 wins. It's going to be an electric night around the Western Athletic Conference. Welcome to the Straight Outta WAC live stream. Let's get it going right now.
Goody will drive. Left-handed flush over the top of Kepning.
Pullback, step back three. Bottom!
Mavericks, it's short. Tip back in. Weaver got it. Yes!
Neely, the handoff. Jones for the tie.
Oh, he's fouled and one.
Presents itself is what you got to take. You can't.
It's knocked away. Still loose. Doherty, the heave. Oh, my God.
Welcome to the Straight Outta WAC podcast.
I'll tell you what, that Sharita Doherty, heave like the play-by-play said on that WAC tournament quarterfinal game, excuse me. I mean, I still can't believe what I saw. I think if I remember right, she said, I just threw it up and prayed, I mean, it was like a shot put. So, man, it'll never get old from that shot. The other one, Tevian Jones with the 3-and-1. To give Southern Utah the win over Utah Valley. That was a good ball game, fun ball game for SUU fans, obviously. So, yeah, I still love those clips, though. They're awesome. But anyways, speaking of those big moments in a big game, tonight, Tuesday night, Super Tuesday is back in the WAC. Like, let's put it that way. Super Tuesday is back in the WAC. We got pair of big-time opportunities for two purple and white schools, obviously, both at home tonight. We've got a couple of in-state games on the men's side as well. One team, GCU, has an opportunity for a quad 1 win, a win over a ranked opponent when they host San Diego State at GCU Arena. Obviously, we've seen the Havocs have been camping out since Saturday night after that UT Arlington game. And then SFA has Louisiana Tech coming in, part of that WAC Conference USA scheduling initiative. We'll get to that in a moment. How I hate that marketing, that marketing phrase. Like, it just doesn't work for me, as well as a lot of other fans. So we'll get to that. That's a quad 2 opportunity for the Jacks at home at the Sawmill. Utah Valley hosts Weber State. That should be interesting, especially considering how bad offensively in the second half the Wolverines were against Utah Tech on Saturday. And then Southern Utah heads up to the Hill in Salt Lake City to the Huntsman Center to take on the University of Utah, the Running Utes. This is, I'm going to point out when we get to this, and I pointed out in my article on the Substack page how this is a huge David versus Goliath matchup. Go read it, wachoopsnation.substack.com. You'll see my article, how I ranked these 4 games in order of importance tonight. So Rob Jader's crew has got a tall task, and you'll understand why I say that as we get into previewing these games. On the women's side, there are a pair of games today. One's going on right now. UT Arlington Lady Mavs are at Colorado. The Buffs are leading 78-55 over the Lady Mavs with about just under 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter. They're in Boulder. Abilene Christian, red hot offense of the Wildcats, goes to TCU, just about a 2-hour drive up I-20 to Fort Worth. And then the other 2 games, Southern Utah's at Texas A&M Commerce, and UTRGV takes on rival Texas A&M Corpus Christi in the South Texas Showdown in Corpus Christi tonight. So we'll get to those in a little bit. Daryl is on the road right now. He is headed to St. George. He will be at the Utah Tech CBU California Baptist game, women's game tomorrow at Burns Arena. So he's looking forward to that. We'll see him tomorrow, and he'll be tracking his travels to St. George to share what he's learned and what he's getting into on his trip. So we'll get back to him tomorrow. So you just get me. So I hope you can handle that. Before we move on, let's get to some housekeeping out of the way. If you missed the Monday newsletter on the Substack page, I just want to spell it out for you. On the WAC Hoops Nation Substack page, we offer subscriptions. We offer free subscription. There is a monthly subscription of $8 per month, and then there's a yearly subscription for $80. If we can get to 100 paid subscribers for a yearly subscription, or even more monthly subscribers, we will draw two subscriber names, who we will then pay for their hotel for the weekend at the WAC tournament at the Orleans Hotel, where the WAC tournament will be held at Orleans Arena. So make sure you sign up for a paid subscription so you could be in that drawing. Along with that, we'll select two others who will get all session tickets to the WAC tournament as well. So make sure you subscribe so you can get in on that drawing. Now, on to Tuesday. Let's start with these two in-state games. Southern Utah at the University of Utah running Utes, and Utah Valley hosting Weber State at the UCCU Center. So first, we're going to start off with Southern Utah. I'm not sure what to make of this game tonight at the Huntsman Center. I didn't get a credential or didn't go cover it because I don't know what we're going to get. When I say it is David versus Goliath, let me spell this out for you, okay? Southern Utah doesn't have a player over 6'9". Parsifala at 6'9" is the tallest player on the roster. The running Utes start 2 7-footers. Okay, so like it's not even it's David versus Goliath. Okay, I believe when I was looking at it, it was 7 foot, 7'1", 6'8", 6'7", and 6'4" was the starting lineup for the Utes. Parsifala at 6'9" is the biggest T-bird on the roster. It might be a long night at the Huntsman Center for the T-birds. Like it just might, because they don't have the length, they don't have the size, they just don't match up well at all versus the running Utes. Now, on the flip side of that, maybe the matchup might work in their favor where they can pull one of those big guys out to cover, a smaller guard, because Rob Jeter starts 4 guards and Parsifala. So that could cause problems maybe. I don't know how Utah doesn't win this game easily, but stranger things have happened this year in college basketball. We've seen a lot of Davids knocking off Goliaths. So could it happen? Maybe. Will it happen? I don't think so. It's just a matter. There's so much size for the Utes. I think it's going to cause some problems. CBU had more size than Southern Utah, and CBU beat the T-Birds by 20-plus points in Cedar City last week. Seattle had some size, not as much as CBU per se. They beat Southern Utah by double digits on Saturday. So, I don't know. It's an in-state game. Anything can happen. Maybe Utah gets caught overlooking Southern Utah a little bit. It might be a long night for the T-Birds, who haven't really shot it particularly well recently. In their 2 games this past week in WAC play, they were 8 of 33 from three-point range. They were just 2 of 9 from three-point range in the loss to CBU on Wednesday, 6 of 24 on Saturday at Seattle U from three-point range. So you're going to live and die by it. So if they can knock them down, maybe they can stick around. But the past 2 games, they haven't shot it well from three-point range. So keep an eye on that. But a true David versus Goliath matchup. And the other matchup, the other in-state game in Orem, UCCU Center. Utah Valley hosts Weber State. Another in-state game, second straight in-state game for the Wolverines. They lost at Utah Tech by double figures on Saturday in a conference game, in the conference opener for the Trailblazers at Burns Arena, where, frankly, Utah Tech has Utah Valley's number and Southern Utah's number and any other in-state team that wants to go down there and play. It just happens that way. How will the Wolverines respond? Now, if you want me to tell you this, so 10 minutes without a field goal in the second half for Utah Valley against Utah Tech. That's when the Trailblazers pulled away. It was late. They cannot have scoring droughts of 5 to 7 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever, against Weber State tonight. Weber State only gives up 58 points per game. They already have a win over St. Mary's. Now, granted, St. Mary's hasn't been really good this year, but still, St. Mary's. They were picked to win the WCC. It's interesting. They were picked to win the WCC, and yet they're not very good. So it's interesting how that works out. But Weber State has won the last 2 games in this series. The last one happened in 2020 in Ogden. Just keep an eye on the offense for Utah Valley and the game flow. They got guys that can score. Tanner Toolson, Drake Allen, Caleb Stone Carrawell, Jaden McClanahan has shown glimpses. Trevin Dorius has shown glimpses. Nate Shamunga has shown glimpses. Like, they've all shown it that they can score at some point. It's just a matter of being consistent with it. They're going to need that on Tuesday night at the UCCU Center against the Weber State squad. Like I said, is holding opponents under 60 points a game. It's just about consistency. And they play better at home. They've only lost 1 game at home in the past 2 years. That was to Seattle. If you remember that, Riley Grigsby banked in a 3 to really seal the win for the Red Hawks last year in January. So just continue that consistency. Play well, execute, hit shots, like knock down shots. The other thing is, watch how they move. When the movement stops, they struggle. Like, it's just, they're better in transition. They're better in rhythm, like any other team, but especially Utah Valley, where if it's one-on-one, they're going to struggle. So just keep an eye on that. You can check out the game on ESPN Plus. Tip-off is at 6 p.m. tonight, or you can go to ESPN960.com. Listen to Jim McCullough on the call. You always love his bottom call when a Utah Valley player hits a 3-pointer. So, yeah, that game should be interesting. I'm interested to see if the Wolverines bounce back. So let's take a 30-second break. We'll come back and talk about these other 2 men's games of the night, plus a chat with an insider for one of these schools. I'm not going to lie. It is hard sometimes when I am the producer of this show, trying to tweet out at the same time, trying to watch on my other computer this UT Arlington Lady Mavs game where they're down 26 right now with 5 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, like trying to balance all of it out. And it's just awesome to be doing it. I love doing it. So forgive me if there are some hiccups here as we go forward. There's 2 other men's games I want to talk about tonight. The first one is taking place in Nacogdoches. It is a rematch of a wild game from 2022, Louisiana Tech at Stephen F. Austin, part of this WAC Conference USA scheduling initiative. I said it on the show yesterday that I could go on and on about this. I hate is going to be a strong word. I really, really, really dislike the fact that they did not market this series between the 2 conferences much better than they have. Like, it blows my mind. You want to bring attention to your leagues? This was an opportunity, and you're not doing it. You're not using this as a way to do that. Like, this should have been a promotion of your teams, of your leagues, of these games. These 2 leagues, when I'm looking at KenPom, and you may not believe this, I know that some CUSA fans won't believe this, but the WAC right now and the Conference USA, they are 13 and 14 in KenPom rankings. They are separated by 0.13 points to determine who is better. Okay? That's why these games matter. Like, this is a huge opportunity for both leagues, okay, to make noise on the national scene. And this is one of the better games of that scheduling initiative. Last year, Louisiana Tech, Stephen F. Austin in Ruston, AJ Cajuste hit a layup with no time left on the clock for the Jacks to win in overtime over Kyle Keller's alma mater. Like, it's just, this is huge. Louisiana Tech comes in the top 50 in the net. So this is a quad 2 opportunity at home for the Jacks, who haven't played well, if we're being honest. They didn't play well against Utah State in that Cayman Islands Classic final game. They didn't play well in their home opener home WAC opener against Tarleton in that loss, even though they had a chance to win it late. They didn't. They got up by 9, gave it away late in the second half, and then had to play comeback against ACU on Saturday. They struggled offensively. Like, it was ugly basketball. I had people tweeting that SFA looked awful. So it's just a matter of which SFA team are we going to get? Are we going to get that team that blew out Northwestern State? Are we going to get that team that blew out Drake? Are we going to get that team that didn't show up against Utah State? That's the question here, because they can win this game. Like, it's very winnable. They'll have to deal with Louisiana Tech Center and Texas Tech transfer Daniel Bacho at 6'11". He's going to present a problem in the paint. But SFA matches up well. The guards are good. It's just a matter of flow and staying within the game plan and executing, hitting shots. That's been the big struggle for the Jacks late in the last 3 games. So, I mean, this is an opportunity at home that the Jacks don't have a lot of these quad 1 or quad 2 opportunities. They don't play a Power 5 team on their schedule this year. Again, it's been a couple years now that they haven't had one on their schedule. So they have to take advantage. The Lumberjacks have to take advantage of this opportunity at home at the Sawmill on Super Tuesday. Like, you have to take advantage of this, because if you don't, it's going to cost you down the road. It may not be as bad as a bad loss to a bad team at home, but it'll still hurt, because this is one of those few opportunities you get to move up in the net, move up in the WAC resume seeding system for when you get to WAC Vegas. I'm just being honest with you here. I want to see how they handle things tonight. Can they get off to a good start? Can AJ Kajus find some rhythm? Can Latrell Giselle find some rhythm? How will the bigs handle Daniel Bacho? That's what we want to keep an eye on. It's going to be a big, big test. Tip-off, I believe, I need to look it up again, is at 6:30. 6:30 Central Time, and can be seen on ESPN Plus tonight. Let me look here just to confirm that. Yeah, 6:30 p.m. Central Time on ESPN Plus. So tune in if you have a few moments. Now let's get to probably the biggest game of the night. Right now we're winding down this Colorado UT Arlington women's game, and the Buffs lead 91-70 with little under 2 minutes left. So not a bad showing. It's just a rough third quarter for the Lady Mavs, who fell behind by about 29 in that third quarter. So they need to get a win. Not a win, but they just need to keep competing. Right now it's 23 points with 1:39 to go. So let's talk about this other big game of the night. Nationally televised game. Nationally ranked opponent. Students camping out for 4 days to get into this ball game. Going to be a sellout. ESPNU, 7 p.m. tip-off, Mountain Time. San Diego State, a return game from 2019. GCU in the top 60 in the net. San Diego State in the top 30 in the net. Quad 1 opportunity at home. Statement game for the Lopes. How good is San Diego State? We don't know. They came off a 1-point win over UC San Diego the other day. So, yeah, 1-point win, 63-62. They've had some overtime games against maybe lesser Pac-12 teams. Washington, California. They beat St. Mary's, who again isn't very good. And they lost. Their only loss at BYU, who we know BYU's been pretty good this year. So, and they feature Jaden Lede, who is averaging just under 23 points a game. Also on the roster is former Seattle U Redhawk Darren Trammell. And here's how good the Aztecs are. Trammell is coming off the bench. We all know what Darren Trammell can do, so that has to say a lot. Brian Dutcher has done a great job. They're coming off a run to the Final Four, and they lost. They were the national runners-up, lost to UConn. UConn was just dominant last year in the NCAA tournament. So this is a big test. How do the Lopes handle it? How do the Lopes handle the hype behind the game? It's it's arguably the biggest game on the schedule, right? Because there's not many more opportunities with this. They get an opportunity at Liberty, which will be a quad 1 opportunity when they go to Lynchburg on Saturday. But right now, on national television, a chance to make a statement, not just for the WAC, but for themselves to prove that they belong, prove that the hype is real, prove that this is a team that can make a run, at least maybe to possibly the Sweet 16 in the NCAA tournament. Like this, there's potential here. Ty Grant Foster, who's been dynamic for the Lopes, how will he deal with? I think he's going to get more pressure, more focus, but they also have Ray Harrison there. So that's the other problem. What's San Diego State going to do? Are they going to pick and choose who they're going to take out? Gabe McLaughlin, Duke Brennan, can they stay out of foul trouble, right? And can GCU get some contributions off the bench? That's a big question. In the 2 games against San Francisco and South Carolina, I know you don't want me to focus on those games. The bench only have 4 points. But like someone else in an interview we're going to listen to here in a minute, Josh Baker was just coming back from surgery, so he wasn't fully into things. He had his best game against UT Arlington on Saturday with 10 points off the bench. Sid Curry, Isaiah Shaw, how will they play into the mix? So we have to watch all that, right? I think it's going to come down to who stays out of foul trouble, who gets to the free throw line more. GCU is one of the leaders in the nation in getting to the free throw line. They beat UT Arlington by getting downhill and getting to the free throw line late in that second half. They were 10 for 10 from the charity stripe. As Paul Coro, who I'm going to have here in just a little bit, the GCU insider, come on. They were in the bonus 5 minutes into the second half against UT Arlington. That means they're attacking the rim. San Diego State doesn't foul a lot, so how will that play into things? I'm going to bring in my recording with Paul Coro from earlier today, so you can listen to our discussion that we had, and you can make your own decision based off of what he's the GCU insider. I'll call him the GOAT because that's what he is, and I love chatting it up with him. He's in sunny Phoenix right now, and he'll be at the game tonight. So listen in. I got Paul Coro, the GCU insider, with me here on this segment for this Straight Outta WAC live show. Big game in Phoenix. GCU hosts number 25 San Diego State tonight at GCU Arena. Obviously, we've seen the Havocs have been camping out since Saturday. I wonder, were they camping out before even the end of that UT Arlington game on Saturday night, or did they start after that game?
No, you couldn't afford to leave that game early because the Lopes had to come back to win it in the second half. So I think they pretty much left the game, went and got their tents, and came back to their spot. By the time I left the arena, I don't know, it was probably 11 o'clock or whatever. There were like 15 tents out there. It was amazing. Like it was something I hadn't seen before, immediately after a game. And, of course, this game's just been talked about forever. Like, this is the return on a 2019 game. So that's how long we've known it's coming, the COVID delays and other scheduling delays. But I think, the schedule comes out and everybody wants to focus one game at a time. But after that game Saturday, they finally got to talk about how excited they were for this one.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, it's a return game from 2019, Dan Marley era, obviously. I guess and it makes it even bigger that San Diego State made a run to the Final Four, was a national runner-up last year. They have won 6 straight. They lost at BYU, and they've won 6 straight since that time. A couple of overtime wins, too. And GCU, all the hype that they've been getting, all offseason, preseason, everything, everybody has picked them to win the WAC, obviously, and go to the NCAA tournament again after going to the NCAA tournament last year. So, what do you expect tonight? I mean, Ty Grant Foster's been fantastic. He won WAC Player of the Week and Newcomer of the Week. I don't think we've seen that in this WAC era where they've made new awards where one player wins both. But, Ray Harrison and him have played really well together. What's kind of something you're going to keep an eye on tonight in that ball game?
Yeah, definitely how the Lopes emerge and feed off the atmosphere. And, we've seen big hyped games in Phoenix before. The last ranked opponent was ASU, but that was during the COVID era. So there was no atmosphere to that game.
Right.
And they lost that one by 1. Probably before that would have been the Illinois team. That was a top team at the time, came in here, and it kind of had that atmosphere. And you saw like the nerves early on before everybody got settled. But this team's built different. I think they really embrace this. They've got kind of a dog mentality about them. There's a lot of guys who don't mind mixing it, being aggressive, mixing it up, initiating contact, and that's why they become one of the highest free throw shooting teams in the nation. It's not just ball rotation and jumper. You have slashers and attackers. Their tempo is doubled in fast breaks from what it was last year. So even though you have those familiar names like Ray Harrison and Gabe McLaughlin and Josh Baker, it's still a very different team than last year with all the impact guys that, like you mentioned, with Tyron Grant Foster.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about that free throw shooting for a minute. So if I was looking at it right, and I feel like I was, the Lopes were 10 of 10 from the free throw line down the stretch against UT Arlington. If they don't go to the free throw line that many times, they don't win that game, I feel like, because even though they held UT Arlington to just one field goal down the stretch in that final 2.5 minutes, it was about them slashing, getting the free throw line and knock them down. Like, maybe talk a little bit more about that, because San Diego State doesn't foul a lot. They play defense without fouling. So that's going to be another storyline to watch in this ballgame.
Yeah, and they've seen those types of teams early on this season, the ones that, they've gone into the game saying don't expect to get bailed out. The coaches will tell the players that going into some of these games with teams like you said with the Aztecs. So it has to be a mentality about, not just flailing and looking at the ref. You got to play through it. And they have some guys that are and one type guys, and maybe it's not an and one tonight. Maybe it's just a 2 with contact, and they're gonna have to have that resolve to play through it. But you mentioned about free throws down the stretch, but they really earned that with their consistency of aggression throughout a half, because they got in the bonus 5 minutes into that second half. And, their run, when they were down 12, their run started with Isaiah Shaw going to the line 3 straight possessions, and he made 5 of 6. And that's what cut the lead down to single digits and got them going. So it's not just Tyon Grant Foster. It's a team mentality about getting downhill and attacking the basket. And, they're still kind of trying to identify some personalities about this team, especially, they still don't have Javon Blackshear Jr. in the fold. And so they're all kind of sharing the playmaking duty still.
So the last time that GCU had, chances for big wins was the Arizona tip-off, San Francisco, South Carolina. There wasn't a ton of production off the bench. I think it was 4 points combined, and that's a game flow thing. That's a need to win. I've talked about that. Is that something that they have to have tonight? Possibly. I don't want to say possibly. I want to say they have to have some contribution off the bench from someone, whether it's Sid Curry, Lokwer, Isaiah Shaw. Somebody has. I feel, am I like a little too high on that?
I think there's a balance there. You see not just GCU, but you see all teams tighten up their rotations in big games. You've seen that San Diego State do that. In those games that you mentioned at the Arizona tip-off, Bryce Drew did that. But a couple things were happening at the time with, Josh Baker was just coming back from his shoulder rehab and definitely didn't look comfortable yet. Now that's different. He had his best game yet against UT Arlington, had 10 points, played great defense, stayed in front of his man, and that's what he gives them, that another mature player experienced off the bench to help do those things. But Isaiah Shaw had pretty much been a set 3-point shooter, and he, like I mentioned, is attacking more now, so that gives him a different element. And then the whole Sidney Curry Duke Brennan thing, you got this 2-headed setter, and usually one or the other is going well. If both are going well, you probably have one of the best centers in the country, in their cumulative production. But there's been times where Brennan's been in foul trouble and Curry got heavy minutes, and both of them have been keys down the stretch in the wins last week with their defense. Sidney Curry made a bunch of defensive plays at UTRGV to close out that game. Duke Brennan did the same at UT Arlington, hit big free throws. And, those are things that give the Lopes a lot of options for different looks, because Duke Brennan's such a good player off the roll. Curry gives just them energy and constant activity on the offensive boards.
I want to ask one last question here. Did you ever think that you'd be maybe on the radio call or writing up a story where you have to maybe talk about Darian Trammell once again, since he's the Seattle U transfer to Arizona State, or not Arizona State, San Diego State. Excuse me. Wow.
Yeah.
But I mean, he had some games against GCU. Like he I think I saw he scored 23 2 years ago, and he scored 17, the year before. Like, he knows how to play against GCU,
Yeah.
I feel like.
Well, I would definitely in some of those games too. He got numbers, but not necessarily efficient numbers. Blackshear
True.
always did a good job defensively on him, and Trammell back then was kind of a volume scorer, so sometimes you live with his points if it takes a lot of shots. But one thing that tells you how good the San Diego State team is that he comes off the bench.
Yeah.
He was the best player on those Seattle teams, and now he's coming off the bench for a team that was national runner up, and he was hitting the free throws to send them to the Final Four. So, this will definitely be one of the best defenses they'll see. They're super active, and they have an All-American type player offensively, and so there's no doubt the Lopes will be at optimum focus for this one. And it was a quick turnaround. It's kind of like a WAC turnaround for those Saturday games, because they played Saturday night and here they are Tuesday. But going back to those minutes, they don't play again till Saturday at Liberty, and that just makes this a huge week as far as like impact of the program. To play two teams in the net top 50, they're up to 56 today, the highest they've ever been, with a chance to go further.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was going to ask about it. This huge week for the Lopes. I mean, tonight against San Diego State, nationally ranked on national television. Then the Liberty game on Saturday is on national television on ESPNU as well. So huge opportunity for GCU to kind of keep moving up in that net rankings, but not just that, solidify maybe that seed for the WAC tournament come March, because we know how they base the seedings on the resume seeding system. Paul Coro, GCU insider. Love the weather. I wish I was there. Unfortunately, it's a weekday game, but I'll be down there in February 10th for a Saturday
I can promise
game.
good weather still in February. This is Phoenix.
Hey, it'll be much better than it will be here in Utah. So appreciate the time and enjoy the ball game tonight.
All right. Thank you, Kyle.
That was Paul Coro, GCU insider. Love talking with Paul. Always a pleasure to talk with him regarding GCU hoops. So big game tonight, Tuesday night, Super Tuesday, GCU Arena, number 25, San Diego State, and WAC preseason favorites, Grand Canyon. Dave Feldman, Mike O'Donnell will be on the call. I talked to Mike O'Donnell this morning over the phone, and it was a great conversation. He's looking forward to his first game at GCU Arena. I told him it's an atmosphere that he has never experienced before. It's going to be a whiteout too, which I'm excited about. I was going to throw that out there for the Havocs. Don't have those theme nights that you have, like, the the costume parties or the pirate night or whatever. Whiteout, purple out, or blackout. One of those three, that would be awesome. It's going to be a whiteout tonight. So looking forward to watching that game while I'm at the UCCU Center for that Utah Valley Weber State game. I'll have my stream going for that GCU San Diego State game. Big time game on ESPNU. Should be a fun one. We're going to take a quick 30-second break. We'll come back, give an update on this. It's gone final now. Colorado beat UT Arlington 95-74 in women's hoops in this afternoon, I guess early Tuesday ball game. But we're going to talk about a proposal that came out from NCAA President Charlie Baker today. Kind of interesting, and I think it's going to affect some teams in the WAC, not just for football, but all sports. So we're going to take a quick 30-second break, and we'll come back and talk about that. All right, guys, we're back. Like I said, it was 95-74 Colorado over the UT Arlington Lady Mavs. There are a couple other women's games today. Like I mentioned, the high-powered ACU offense goes up I-20 to Fort Worth to take on TCU this evening. Peyton Hull has been, as a true freshman guard, has been really good. Scored 25-plus points in 3 straight games, 30 plus in 2 of those 3 games. Bella Earl had a triple double in 2 of those 3 games as well. So we'll see how Julie Goodenough's team responds after that tough overtime loss at SFA on Saturday. Southern Utah is at Texas A&M Commerce, I think, for their second straight win. The defending WAC regular season tournament champions. Off to a slow start, but they were off to a slow start last year before winning the WAC regular season and tournament titles. So we'll see how Tracy Mason's crew responds. And then UTRGV is at rival Texas A&M Corpus Christi in the South Texas Showdown. Lane Lord's team is looking for their first win of the season. They're 0-7 right now, struggling to win ball games or to even at moments. They just have lulls. Against Tarleton on Saturday, it was the fourth quarter lull that just hurt them. So we'll see what they do. All 3 of those games can be seen on ESPN Plus later tonight. Let's talk about this proposal that new NCAA president Charlie Baker came up with. It's on. I found it on sports.yahoo.com today. It's by Ross Dellinger, and it pertains a lot to FBS football per se. But I thought it was interesting that they, as part of this, if you want to be FBS, it says here, entry into the subdivision requires a school to invest at minimum $30,000 per year per athlete into what is termed an enhanced educational trust fund for at least half of a school's countable athletes. Schools would determine when athletes receive the amount, which for 4-year athletes will total at least $120,000. They still have to abide by the framework of Title IX. So that is upwards of $6 million to give or take a little bit, $6 million, give or take a little bit, depending on how many student athletes you have, depending on how many student athletes are going to get that payout. I was talking to some people today, and I think, one, this is going to hurt the small schools. In a sense, financially, it's going to hurt them, I should say. Not necessarily from a competitive standpoint, but just financially, because they don't have that kind of money. So another person had the thought that if this proposal is done right, it could be a good thing. There's no secret that the separation between the power conferences and, the G5 or the mid majors, that some type of separation is inevitable, especially in football. Okay, because you have the haves, you have the power schools that are getting all this money, and there's been billion-dollar TV contracts that have been signed recently that they're going to get a lot of that money, and there's a push for them to get more of that. So it might be better for the NCAA if there was a Power 4 breakoff where they get more autonomy and so forth over what they get to decide. It's just a matter of how will that happen, right? The one thing that you don't want it to change is the championship experience. We don't want it to change the NCAA tournament. We don't want it to change the NIT. We don't want it to change the College World Series. We don't want it to change those things. For college football playoff stuff, okay, fine, maybe, where these FBS schools, the Conference USA, like Liberty and New Mexico State and SMU and Tulane, and all these schools that have done so well that they have a chance to play for national title instead of never being in the college football playoff, which we see year after year in the way it's set up. So I think it's a benefit there. It's not a final product, ready for approval yet, but there's such a growing financial gap, like it says here, the growing financial gap between the highest resource colleges and universities and other schools in Division I has created a new series of challenges. So, it just, instead of it being pay for play through NIL, it's basically going to be schools can pay their athletes, money out of this trust fund. So I don't know. It'll be interesting. It just, I don't know. Like it says here, a school depositing a minimum of $30,000 each year per athlete for half of their athletes would spend about $6 million of years. Schools would not be required to deposit the same amount for each athlete. This model leaves that discretion to the institution. So there's a lot of questions here of how this will work. In theory, it sounds good maybe on the surface, but we have again, so many questions. It's not, but it's going to separate the power conferences from the mid majors, from the group of 5 conferences. That's it. This is kind of going to be that nail in the coffin where this is going to separate them, especially football wise. I'm curious to see how it'll affect the non-football schools because there's still a lot of those out there. So it'll be very, very interesting to see how this plays out. I want to just bring that up in this Straight Outta WAC Live since it was there. Anyways, everybody, again, Super Tuesday, 4 big games in the WAC: Southern Utah, Louisiana Tech at Stephen F. Austin, Weber State at Utah Valley, and the big one, number 25, San Diego State at GCU. And then 3 other women's games today: Southern Utah at Texas A&M Commerce, ACU at TCU, and UTRGV at Texas A&M Corpus Christi. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Remember to subscribe to the WAC Hoops Nation Substack, free monthly or yearly. And remember the plan with the yearly one: if we get to 100 yearly subscribers, 2 subscribers will be chosen whose rooms will be covered at the WAC tournament in March at the Orleans Hotel and Arena, as well as 2 others getting all session tickets to the WAC tournament. Everybody enjoy this Super Tuesday. Enjoy the night. Be safe. And, hopefully WAC Hoops has another solid evening of college basketball.
Thanks for listening to the Straight Outta WAC podcast. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and other podcasting platforms. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Remember to follow WAC Hoops Nation on all your favorite social media platforms.